morning, good afternoon, or whenever you're watching this video. In today's video, you are learning about the scientific revolution. So you should have your scientific revolution notes, which I believe are 1A. So make sure you grab those, put your first and last name and your period on your paper. Today's learning target, the student will be able to describe how the scientific revolution changed the world. So your exit ticket question, if you look on page 2, you'll see this. How did the scientific revolution change the world? Now, remember I told you that Galileo was forced to recant his statements or possibly go to prison for a long time or be um, killed, and he did do that. His book was banned and forbidden for a very long time. As a matter of fact, it wasn't until 1979 that they began to actually look at what he wrote again and do an inquisition. And in 1992, the church publicly apologized that they had been mistaken about Galileo. Galileo also came up with some other ideas. One was inertia: an object remains at rest or in straight line motion unless acted upon by an external force. So in the picture here, you see young Galileo with two balls, one large and one heavy. And when he drops them from the leaning tower of Pisa, which one will hit the ground first? Now, which one, in your opinion, hits the ground first? The heavier one or the light one? What he found is that they both land at the same time. Galileo's law of falling bodies states that all objects fall at the same speed regardless of their mass, and that as they fall, the speed of their descent increases uniformly. Our next scientist is Francis Bacon, and here's a picture of him. Or maybe not so much. Here is an actual picture of Francis Bacon, and he viewed the most important source of knowledge as experience, meaning not the church, not a person, not a thinker or observer or scientist, but observation and experimentation. He used complex mathematical calculations to convert observation and experiments into scientific laws, and that scientific truth is deduced from observations and experiments. He ultimately developed what we know of as the scientific method. Think about the scientific method as observation and experimentation. I observe something. For example, I think that if I drop two balls, one heavy, one light, the heavy one will hit the ground first. That's my hypothesis. And then I test that hypothesis. So I keep dropping these basketballs, keep dropping them, keep dropping them. A heavier basketball, a lighter basketball. And what I find is they both hit the ground at the same time. And as I analyze those results, meaning I keep trying, I write it down, I test with different types of objects, I draw the conclusion that my initial observation failed and that I have to make a new hypothesis, or and my new hypothesis is that if I drop two heavy objects or a heavy and light object, they'll both fall, they'll both reach the floor at the same time. And as I test that out and it passes, it becomes a new theory. So that's the scientific method, can be used with anything, even outside of science. All right, our next scientist is Rene Descartes. I'm pretty sure I'm not pronouncing that right. But ultimately, he was a thinker and a dreamer. And he was concerned with, am I really alive? Am I really here? Or is some evil spirit or something convincing me that I'm here while I'm really dreaming? And so he came up with the phrase, I think, therefore I am. So you should be finished with the page 1 and most of page 3. On page 3, it says, what was Descartes' physical proof of existence? His one unshakable truth. Your answer should be I think, therefore I am. First, you have these universal laws of gravity and motion. So Galileo comes up with inertia. A body at rest will stay at rest, and a body in motion will stay in motion. So therefore, when you have a car that's driving, your body is in motion even if you don't feel like it. And if you suddenly hit something head on, the body that's in motion will continue to move because it's in motion. And then you have finally Newton's law of gravity. And then later on, he begins to study lenses and prisms, which become the foundation of optics and why you may be wearing glasses or contacts. All right, our next scientist is Robert Boyle. So you should be on page 4 at this point. It says, who is Robert Boyle? He is the father of chemistry. He establishes chemistry as a pure science. So prior to this, Robert Boyle was a teacher or professor, and he taught alchemy. And in alchemy, they believed that the 4 main elements were earth, air, fire, and water. But he began to disprove this theory that there were way more elements of matter. And he discovered the idea of atoms and that chemistry is its own actual science. One of his major contributions is Boyle's law. This law explains how volume, temperature, and pressure of gas affect each other. You can remember Boyle because he used chemistry to remove his boil. So on your paper, it says, what is Boyle's law? You should have this as your answer. Alrighty, we are getting to the end, and we have 2 more scientists. This is my favorite, Andreas Vesalius. Andreas Vesalius. He is my favorite because he challenged the views of the body. Vesalius took bones and even corpses from graveyards in order to help him understand the human body. This was illegal at the time, as it still is now. By dissecting human bodies in the 1500s, he made discoveries about anatomy. His book on the structure of the human body, or Fabrica of 1543, was the first manual of human anatomy with clear and detailed instructions. Vesalius is probably my favorite because he was literally going into graveyards and cutting off bodies and running off from it when the police, or what they call the police at the time, were chasing him around. Like, he was obsessed with getting these dead bodies to study them. Last but not least, we have William Harvey, who was an English scholar in the 1600s, and he described the circulation of the blood for the first time. He showed how the heart serves as a pump to force blood through veins and arteries. Alrighty, so now we're going to answer our exit ticket question. How did the scientific revolution change the world? How did the scientific revolution change the world? So you're going to answer this on page 2. And you're going to write it in a complete sentence. If you need help, I gave you a sentence starter here. The scientific revolution changed the world by, and give me a way that the world is different as a result of the scientific revolution. If you have any questions or concerns, please raise your hand. If you're finished with your notes, pop it in the black bin and move on to 1B. Bye.